Welcome everyone. We're very happy to have you in the first session of the Urban Design Conversation. This is an initiative that we took in the BAT team to actually think together in how we can liaise our current students with our alumni, because we believe that alumni are kind of a very important part of what the BAT program is, and is part of the community of practice that we hope to be nurturing. So today we're very, very happy and honored to have four guests, for now three, from very different latitudes. And the main topic of today is this idea of critical engagement. For you, it's been part of our discussions in terms of the imperative that urban design as a discipline and as practitioners have in terms of engaging with multiple knowledges, in addressing the asymmetries of power, through finding different alternative ways of connecting, revealing, making visible and impactful the voices of many of the different groups that usually are oppressed or not recognized as being legitimate interlocutors for the processes of urban change. We're also addressing the challenge of the cooptation of participatory processes in the neoliberal regime. As we all are aware, participation has become kind of a buzzword for actually legitimizing very extractive practices, and therefore thinking from a new and from different perspective how to engage with people in thinking and imagining together the city is something essential to what we do and that we keep thinking about. And thirdly, the moment that currently we are in also pushes us to think differently about how to engage with people when we are facing a civilizational crisis, and how then also the digital sphere becomes a space where we also need to think how to envision equitable strategies for engaging different publics, understanding also the digital divides, but also thinking at the same time how to, in that process, decolonize what we do and how can we, in a way, foster spatial justice through different means. So I'm very happy today to share the floor screen window with four very important alumni. So we are going to be having today Silvia Chi from Mexico City, and I'm very grateful with her that now there is like 5 a.m. So she was very kind to join us today. She has been leading a project called Asambleas Ciudadanas, and so she will be speaking about that. We have also Lucy Guarin. She is based in Oxford. We had Lucy for 2 years in the program. She will be sharing her experience in an organization called Transition by Design. We also have present Witty, our lovely Witty. He is now based in Bangkok, and he is one of the coordinators of the Communities Architect Network that we've been working with for many, many years. And also we have Achilles Caffey Smith, that is our now very prestigious alumni that you see him everywhere. So he's part of a practice called Resolve Collective. He's based here in London, but also doing work in some other places. So we have a very interesting set of modalities of practice and also geographies. So the way we're going to proceed is giving 10, 12 minutes to each one to present their approaches to engagement. And then we're going to be opening up for questions. Giovanna is going to make a few points and comments trying to weave the 4 presentations, and maybe we can kick off with some questions about the reflection in terms of the role of urban design, particularly in this historical conjuncture. And afterwards is open totally for all the participants to ask anything about the practice and experiences of our colleagues here present. So without further ado, then I'm gonna give the floor to Silvia, if you want to start.
Well, I didn't want it to, but no worries. Let me just check my presentation very quickly.
Maybe in the meantime, I can do a very quick housekeeping.
Sure, go.
For security reasons, we need to mute all the attendees, but we would like this conversation to be as participatory as possible. So please, everyone, do use your raise hand tool whenever you want, or type your questions within the chat, and we will pick them up later at the end after the full presentations.
Well, thank you, Giovanna. Thank you, Catalina, for the invitation. As a former UCL and DPU student, I am very happy to be here with you. Most of the things I'm going to share today are influenced by the ethos and commitment of the DPU in topics such as social justice and right to the city and so much more. Thank you to Camilo, that he's also here. He was the director of BOD when I was a student there. So before going ahead with the work we carry out in Mexico, I wanted to share with you a few things in order to clarify the context we work on. I work mostly in Mérida, or in the peninsula of Yucatan, and Mérida is a city of almost 1 million inhabitants, a middle-sized city that is located at the southeast of Mexico. It's the most important city in the peninsula, in the area, and it has the largest services in terms of education, health, banking, and so on. And also, Mérida is the safest city in Mexico. Is the city where in our city there are no gang shootings, there are no mafia killings as in other parts of Mexico. So it's quite safe to go out, to walk around the city, and to be by yourself late at night. As opposite to those viral news maybe you have seen on TV or in social media related with urban insecurity in some Mexican cities, this insecurity is unknown in Mérida, which is very quiet, and urban violence doesn't affect us directly. So people from other cities and from other regions of Mexico are moving to Mérida looking for safety and quietness. And I want to explain this because in the context of our country, the city has a very unique situation. First, this safety thing and location means that there are no major pressing reasons for the people to mobilize and to organize themselves. So it's really a challenge to engage people to participate, to change the status quo or power relations. Like, people don't want the notion to change, they want to improve or to make larger or bigger or better, but not the notion of change is not very sort of a common discussion within people. And this is because what we have in the city is quite good, so people would be very comfortable with that. So in our work, we try to tackle with the small scale, like block scale and neighborhood scale, because we think we have seen that when we talk about everyday life issues, the people engage better, and they are worried about, you know, the public space at the corner of the houses, or the this corner where, you know, there are always car accidents and so on and so forth. So this is the way we sort of engage with people and into urban and pedagogical processes. And second, very few cities in Mexico have visible and innovative practices related with urban transformations and urban participatory processes or so on. And the ones that do have these processes are located in the central Mexico. So authorities and people in general are not used to demand, or are not used to these practices, or are not used to demand those kind of practices. So to replicate those sorts of things is not quite easy to do it in most Mexican cities. So roughly that's the social context where we work and try to navigate. I'm trying to sort of matched pictures with what I am saying. Let's see if I can make it. Our work in the NGO involves urban transformations, because we have found that the spatial component is key to engage people into participation and into politics related to the city. So we have seen in our practice, for example, how women who never wanted before to participate, now they have become leaders of the communities. We have seen women involved in processes to work with peers, to engage in negotiations with stakeholders and accomplish goals in a transformation of the built environment. So those processes all involve a spatial component. So in this way, they have proven to be empowering both to communities and individuals. And this is work we did in a small community in a rural area of Merida, of Yucatan, sorry. And we worked with only women here in a project that was called the Political Engagement of Women in Processes of Rural Transformations, or something that was organized by the by INE Mexico, that is the one that organized like the national elections and so on. Then I want to share with you a few like glimpses of our work. One of our more significant actions as the NGO was 5 years ago, where there was this big and massive new project for one area of the city, and they were trying to build a big avenue and change the whole scale of movement and lots of other things in a small community. So they were going to increase the pollution, the noise, car accidents, and so on. So as you can suppose, the community was not given information about the project. Of course, they needed to participate in it. And as a result of the community mobilization, we were given the opportunity by the government to review and change the project to participatory design. So what you have seen here is like one of the pictures is the protest that the neighbors were doing, and the other one was like the small proposal we did with the neighbors. So as a result of this mobilization, we could change the project, and then when the construction began, they incorporate our inputs. And after all this happened, it was all very sort of in the news and so on, and the government needed to sort of review their implementation of projects, because this was happening in lots of other places. This was one of the first exercises where the municipal authorities acknowledge by public pressure the notion of the right to the city as a right to participate in urban transformations. This was not as I am telling you now very quickly, but it was not a smooth process or an easy one. It was contested, was conflictual. So negotiation, reflection, and critical engagement as urban designers were key to navigate it and to achieve the goal we could reach, and that was not necessarily the goal we wanted originally. More recently, we have developed with the municipality process to co-design new or renew public spaces in the city. The process was designed and implemented through a board of civic servants of several areas in the municipality. This process was itself a challenge, because municipal servants are not used to participatory processes. They are very scared of the participatory process. They are very scared to, get out there and work and talk to people. And they are also very scared to work collectively through like the municipality structure. They usually work in their departments. Also, they don't want to include external people into their discussions of, for example, finances, site selection criteria, and so on. So our NGO was hired to implement the urban design process in different areas and communities of our city, and we were included in the board as consultants. And what I want to say here is that we are clear that if we want to achieve the city we want, it's key to get into decision-making processes, and that involves to work with authorities to know how the government works, and also a better understanding of how politics work and how, like all these people is trying to gain whatever they want to gain, because they all have interests into these processes. And as Catalina was saying before, what are like, are they trying to legitimize some agenda, or are they trying to push something different? And you need to open that door and try to keep it open and make it a bigger way to enter people participating into processes. Then what I'm showing you here is some of the pictures of the process. We have been working around 1 year into this. These participatory processes have 3 phases: diagnosis, co-design, and socialization of the final project. And within a year of the whole process and construction, the spaces are completed. So people can see quite quickly like where the inputs were put when the construction happened. So these participatory processes have been implemented in approximately 20 to 25 parks in Merida, and this has become a major, like a flagship program for the mayor. He was at the very beginning of the whole thing very skeptical, I would say, and now it has become a little bit more of I think there are very good pictures to put on the social media and so on. And he has seen that has lots of gains from opening a little space of participation. So there is no time from key points. For example, in one of the phases of the process, people prioritize the specific areas of the space. So in case the money that is allocated to the park is not enough, the people who is in charge of designing the whole thing could see what they could focus on. This decision-making process needs a discussion within the community about what comes first, and which needs are the first ones to be fulfilled. And this also means that community engages with processes of consensus and dissensus related with improving of the space. Again, this is not an abstract thing. They are talking about their park, the park of the neighborhood, sorry. They are talking about places that have been there for 15 to 20 years, maybe sometimes, and nothing happened, never, and now it's happening, and they need to talk about it and need to discuss and make agreements and then move forward to have a new public space. So now I want to focus on key learnings related with these processes for all parties involved. Well, the first thing that, you have, I'm sure, here dozens of times here, is that it's key to understand the social issues of the community with the community. It's not like, you go there and you sort of do a survey or something. You need to work with the community in order to have like a better understanding of what's going on, to help to build up arguments, like as a team, as a technical team in the community, to clarify reasons, for example. And this could also leverage when negotiating with the stakeholders. Also, we think that there is need for a critical and pedagogical approach to how cities are built about the environment and social justice and inclusion. We always, when we organize workshops or whatever, these are always key components of what we talk with people and how we sort of frame the problems that could be seen in the community, and how can we connect those problems to this larger city scale. Then related to urban design, it's also very important to build and embrace a narrative that encompasses urban concepts, social cohesion goals, and a collective action approach. We cannot talk only about the spatial components of the problem. We also need to talk about how this reflects into the social, or how the social problems that people could articulate sometimes could have a reflection in the space. And also we have to frame this into this collective action. We could change it if we organize collectively to, change whatever it is, the thing that worries the community. These a few of things we have organized in different places and spaces with, with people volunteering, trying to building diagnosis with communities and so on. And then it is also key for us, it has been key to engage and implement democratic processes within the community organization. For example, how to design an assembly, how to accomplish transparency, how to keep accountable both actors and processes. In the left side of the slide, you can see how, for example, when we do a few of the urban transformations we try to do with volunteers and so on, we put how much money we had and how that money was spent, and this is very helpful for community organization because they can see, like, you know, properly how first of all which in which things where money was put, and also they could see that now that they, you know, they managed to have, you know, like this amount of money, maybe next time they could reach a little bit a higher goal and they could do some other things or get some furniture for the park or whatever they want. And then another thing that we always had as an experience is that we have to highlight the role women play in the community organization and improvement, because women are very important in those organizations. We are always having more women in our meetings, always are women who are always pushing and asking and moving things and organizing things. And this has been not enough put into sort of there to people to understand how different it is when women when women are doing this and we are not doing this, right? So I don't know how to explain. It's like gender perspective and gender analysis are much needed in our field, and we need at least to make visible how different are spaces for women and for men, and at least that for starters. This is a graphic that I have where you can see how women and men are qualifying public spaces about the attractiveness. Women are the bars in blue and men are the bars in pink. And for example, as you can see here, most of women opinions were concentrated on qualifying the space as not very attractive or very little attractive. Most opinions of men were concentrated in attractive and very attractive. And if you could see in what the description, what it said, it says, for example, lack of lighting, it was only mentioned by women, for example.
Can we wrap up?
Sorry?
Can we wrap up and maybe expand in the questions?
Yeah. I was going to say just one more thing with this slide. We have seen. I was telling you this because, and I also want to end the talk with talking about the scaling up and how this that I have shared you could be seen at different scale. For example, in a municipal scale, the government has been doing lots of changes in order to incorporate more public participatory processes in different ways, not always in the ways we would like or we would push, but they have been trying to do it. Of course, they have their agenda. Of course, they have their own interest. But I think we have seen how people is more interested into participating in these processes. So government has needed to open those spaces to sort of allocate people needs into those spaces. So I think that would be my last slide. So now questions. Sorry, I always want to say lots of things.
Thank you, Silvia. We are going to be moving to the other presenters, and then towards the end we can go into questions, but you can also start answering in the chat because there are already 2 comments. Maybe can we move to Lucy, and then with the end we close with Akil?
Yeah, of course. Let me share my screen. Can you see that all right? Yeah, so hi. It's absolutely lovely to be here and to see familiar faces. So thanks for the invite. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about some recent projects that we've been working on, and particularly around a project called Open House, and then hopefully leave you with a couple of sort of open questions or thoughts that are currently going through my mind, which I hope we can revisit in the questions. So I work in Oxford, which is a city in the southeast of England. And when most people think of Oxford, they think of something a little bit like this. So this is a still from a really fantastic film made by an artist called Penny Woolcock, who, if you look her up, she's got some work called Fantastic Cities, which looks at the representations we have of cities and how that does or doesn't represent the accuracy of a place. So living in Oxford is a strange experience because it has this very historic reputation, the Dreaming Spires, but it's a city of huge inequalities. So where I live, 2 miles away, there's another ward, and the life expectancy for men between those two wards is 15 years, which is the biggest gap in the UK. And we've got extreme wealth and privilege, but we've also got 18 areas of Oxford are classed in the most deprived 20% of areas in the UK. So it's a city of massive inequality. And it's really interesting listening to Sylvia talk about how safe Merida is and what that means for whether people do or don't engage. Because in Oxford, we have the same, but we have the total opposite as well. So we have a small number of people who do very well out of Oxford staying the way it is. And then we have a much larger number of people who are pretty hopeless. And a big part of that is because we have this kind of huge overbearing influence of the colleges of Oxford University when it comes to land ownership. So 80% of the city centre is owned by colleges. And these are ancient institutions that really don't care at all how the city's run, don't behave like citizens, but have huge power and control over it. And this is a kind of map that we've been working on recently of the perimeter of Oxford. So Oxford's growing, like most other cities, we need to build new infrastructure, build new housing. This is the land that's owned by colleges who either sit on it and wait till it earns them more money, or they're kind of building unaffordable homes or facilities for students and staff. So Oxford's a very constrained city. And into this, we fit our work. So Transition by Design, we're a cooperatively run architecture and design cooperative, and we only work on social and environmental justice issues. We mostly are white British people who have studied development and come to the conclusion that there's not much place for us in development. And so we should probably try practicing it at home. And that is a theme that really kind of runs through a lot of our work. So just 2 recent projects before I talk about Open House. So I do most of our work on community engagement. The first project that I want to talk about is this, which is Floyd's Row. So we designed Oxford's most recent kind of homelessness shelter and accommodation hub. And we ran that as a co-design process. So we spent a month working with people with either a recent or current experience of rough sleeping and running a number of different exercises to help them co-design how different spaces within the building would work. And then at the moment, my engagement looks more like this, which I'm sure some of you are a bit sick of. Having to do public consultations on Zoom has its benefits. You know, you're certainly reaching some people that you wouldn't otherwise, but overall I don't love it and I find it a bit of a pain. This is a project that we're currently doing with Oxford's Covered Market, which is this kind of historic covered market in the city centre, which is remarkable because it is one of the very small bits of the city centre that's owned by the city rather than the colleges. The City Council put out a tender about 1.5 years ago, which included quite a strong bit of community engagement, but it was a kind of, it was a bit of a tick box exercise. So they listed a list of kind of quite classic stakeholders, mostly kind of neighbours and, the Preservation Trust and people who would have an interest in the market or the traders in the market. And we actually went back to them and said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing public engagement on this? What's the purpose? And they sort of said, well, I don't really know. And so we pushed them, and that was a kind of process of dialogue. And actually, we managed to convince them that they'd just announced this big new strategic priority as the local authority, which was to make the city centre more representative of the city as a whole. So at the moment, Oxford City Centre is really kind of chain shops, tourist attractions, and then students. And there's this recognition within the city that there's lots of different communities that live in Oxford more in the periphery that currently aren't very well served by the city centre. So now we are currently in the midst of a consultation, which is asking how can the redevelopment of the covered market act as a catalyst to make the city centre more representative of the city as a whole. Both of those projects had clients, and the clients have the money And so they get to write the brief, and they therefore get to shape the consultation. And so the project that I really want to talk to you about is a project where that wasn't the case, which is a project called Open House. And I, at Transition by Design, the main focus of my work is I run a 3-year action research project, which is called Homemaker Oxford, and that's looking at extreme housing need in Oxford and what a more kind of creative and community-led movement to start tackling extreme housing need in Oxford might look like. And as part of that research, we wanted to kind of really centre people with a lived experience of homelessness. And so we wanted to kind of do lots of work with people and talk to them and find out their experience. And we also wanted to kind of generate more of a citywide conversation about housing and homelessness. And so we turned an empty shop in the centre of Oxford into what we called a public talking shop on housing and homelessness. And in one sense, it was just that. It was a bit like a public living room. So it was open 5 days a week from 10 until 5. We had loads of events. We had coffee mornings. We had poetry writing sessions. We had arts and crafts. Women was for women and non-binary folk only. So it was always full of kids and kids' toys and chaos. We had lots of events. And in one sense, it was a space for different people to talk about housing and for people to run events on housing. But in another sense, it was a really active experiment in participation in the built environment. So kind of based on this idea that once you're homeless, there's spaces that are for you, and you're kind of a service user, or you're a client, or you're a member, and they come with rules, and you know there's times a day you can access it and times you can't. And if you're not homeless, then there's loads of places you can go, and they come with menus and welcomes, and you know you have the run of the city. And so Open House was a bit of an experiment in if you can create a space that's truly actively welcoming to people who don't feel very welcome in the majority of Oxford's public spaces, then can you create a platform where those people feel comfortable enough to tell their story, to speak their truth, and in a way that other people will listen to and other people will learn from, with this kind of recognition that we're all part of the same housing system, and it's a housing system which means some people have spare rooms whilst other people sleep rough. And so we spent a year in Open House, running loads of events, welcoming lots of people, making lots of people, you know, feel safe and secure in places that they didn't elsewhere, and having a pretty great time, doing a lot of jigsaw puzzles, and having lots of very frank conversations about housing. And it really worked. It was a really interesting lesson in like how you made people, how kind of you made people really listen to each other and understand their experience. And for me, as a practitioner in terms of like citizen engagement or critical engagement, it taught me a lot about the power of slowness, but also about the power of localness. So actually like really spending a proper amount of time engaging in the processes of a city, and the actors involved. And I think what it really taught me, which has cycled back into my other sort of more traditional community engagement work, is the role of the practitioner within community engagement. And I think until Open House came along, I think perhaps I'd been guilty of doing what a lot of architects and designers do, which is go out, ask some questions, listen, and then feed that back. You know, feed that back to your client or to the project team, and you know that's your job. You're done, and then you're done. And then I think what Open House taught me is that actually the role of the practitioner is much more to facilitate a process whereby a group of people meaningfully input into a project. And that means paying attention at stages that I think you normally wouldn't. So in terms of like shaping the brief, in terms of figuring out who's in the room and figuring out expectations, how you communicate with them. And then also on the other side, working with partners to kind of make them interrogate, actually, why are you asking this community of people to input? What is a meaningful way in which they can input on this project? How are you going to hold them to account? How are you going to make sure they get listened to? And when I spent a year in Open House, where I had the same people coming in every day, coming to events, they'd come in the next day, they'd ask me, I'd see them the next week, they'd say what's happened with that. I had them holding me to account in a very like visceral way. And that made me really think through my processes as a practitioner to make sure how I could make sure that the valuable time that they'd given me could be put to best use. And that's probably enough from me until questions. There's a couple of links here where you can find out more about Open House or more about our work at Transition by Design, or there's a few things that I've written about our work. But for now, I'll hand back over to Catalina.
Thanks a lot, Lucy. Brilliant. I wanted always to hear the open house experiment. So thanks for sharing that. Shall we move to Witty? So he can walk us through the experience with Can.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me. I might have little difficulties. I could not speak very fast. Okay. I'll try my best. So my name is Witty. How you spell it doesn't matter, but it's the sound is TV and then you switch. So it's Witty. And I work with CAN. CAN is a community architects network, which it's, imagine a web that connects a dot of community architects or technical stuff, architects, engineer, artisans around Asia together. And we are people who are passionate for working with people with difficulties and low-income groups, and how we can use our technical knowledge to support that. It starts like this, but then later it grows into communities of network of people who are passionate in designing the process for change. So instead of focusing on the architectural, we see importance of the process. So it started, we work with small communities, many small communities. And in 2016, we did something kind of a big leap. We asked ourselves, how can the thing that we do scaled up, not in a way that we get more communities, but in a way that it spread out to the wider network. And in 2016, Giovanna was there also in Chum Sang. So she would be the presenter, continue from here. I'm just kidding. Okay. But yeah, and what I want to show you now is a project from 2019. We call it co-creation process, co-create Janaida, which is a small, very small city in Bangladesh, in the west side of Bangladesh. And it's a very calm city. It's a very typical one. You will see in the image. I will not give too much data unless it will cover your eyes. No? So yes, the document, the video, I encourage you to see. It's like a James Bond for community process. So I have to broadcast. I have to. Okay, could I share the screen? Is it up?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Is it running? You hear the sound?
If it is a video, you need to stop the sharing and share again by pressing down two small buttons that says share sound. So stop the screening and do it again. And when you share the screen below, there are two things you need to tick.
Ah, okay. Share sound and optimize for video clip.
Yes.
I appreciate your help. Thank you very much. Now my mouse disappeared. Okay.
It's a very good beginning that if the community people can design or co-create their own community, why not the whole city people can design their own city?
All of these are in the process of co-creation. The show is the bump on the bicycle. It's a part of the process.
শিউলি ফুলের বীজ
That time they knew that there will be a path. This co-creation workshop, we start with urban poor communities first. And the community, this is the oldest low-income community, and they are the poorest one, but they are organizing their community. They are doing a lot of things. They are teaching other people. So then we did small workshops with kids. We sat with elderly people. We sat with community people. Then every group actually mentioned about their dreams. All of them discussed about open space and good road, good pedestrian to walk. Then again, it was a surprise us that the people also got confidence that, yeah, we can do it. And we always call it network. So from that moment, we started to connect with city people more.
We actually invited all the groups we could sit, and they would actually link us to other groups. And the young people, they have so many energy, they are talking about the action. And we know they can actually take it forward even without the organization. So that's how. And we try to reach academia, then who is in the action, who are in the research, and every field.
My group works with this community. We also want to know about their story. What is the important to them? What is their skill? So all of these things we can see the connection with the city because they are part of the city.
I'm working with the River and Open Space group. So basically we trying to find alternative routes. How can we go to the river? So at first we choose a group of children who can help us to find the way out, what kind of riverside or what kind of pond they envision.
I worked in the group for the road and open places design. We talked to all the people who are using the roads. So we proposed separate road for bicycle and pedestrian. And we proposed area where the road can become the public space for the city. They want that their city road will be greenery, colorful with flowers, and they want that city should be clean.
I think in the process of co-creation, we should not forget to go deep. We need to be very focused and clear, but also need to make sure that we include. So I feel we all need to support each other and walk together on that path, and it is possible to.
So when we did the workshop and when we showed it to the city mayor and the DC, they understand. They could understand when they were outside. They could see and walk on the path and they could see the people. Then we walked to that jail area, the path through the river. Immediately, he said that, yeah, this is possible. So in this workshop, I think if they are connected with respect and do something together, then it can be implemented.
I feel people have energy, they want to do things. They always say this is a platform where everyone is equal, you know, there is no up and down. So the magic moment for me was how the community presented. They learned the language of negotiation. It sparked my heart. So from this platform, many things can actually go, and we can actually do this together.
দশে মিলে ঝিনাইদহ শহর গড়ি।
We can co-create Jhanaidah.
We can co-create ঝিনাইদহ।
দশে মিলে ঝিনাইদহ গড়ি।
দশে মিলে ঝিনাইদহ গড়ি। দশে মিলে ঝিনাইদহ শহর গড়ি।
Yes, thank you for still being here. Yeah, the video come out very good. The real workshop was horrible. I'm just kidding. It's not. It's great, and it's a full energy into us. Usually, it would be more interesting to ask you what you see and what you could observe, but I will give a short brief on it. I guess I have like 3 or 4 minutes left. Am I right, Catalina?
2.5. Let's see.
2.5. Okay. So the core, the heart of this co-creation is that you have, how to say it? There are thousands of issues in the city. And the best way to bring people together is to go in with the questions of what are the important issues that they want to work with, what issues touches the most people. In that way, we are not the people who set the agenda for the goal, but they are together. They have to agree that, okay, there are thousands of issues, but what are the core? What could we work in these 4 days as the starting point, as the spark of the fire, and then wish that it continues, no? Maybe I will show some photos to share with you what happened after that. Okay. Is it up?
Yes.
Okay. So you've seen we try to redesign the sidewalk, and this is the condition. It was, many things. Car will go inside, motorcycle park wherever they want, but people were talking about a good sidewalk, a safer one, more organized one, but no one were willing to do it. So this is a time, an occasion that people could really make change. And this is what happened after the 4 days workshop. We talk about it, we discuss, we draw, we sketch, and then instead of sticking to that paper presenting to the government, the mayor, we decided to let's do it. We have only 1.5 days left, so let's show people, because if you have a paper, a poster size paper, 20 people could look at it, 30 maximum. But if it's something real, something on site, then the whole city, if they want, they could come and experience by themselves. And once you bring this, once the people work, once the people talk about it, then you don't have to care too much about politics, because politicians will come. Where there are people raising their voice, politicians will come. They will ask, and if people are ready, they will be able to tell the politicians what are the heart of these things that they were doing. This is Kabir, our friends, who point to the notes with his foot. And one very interesting thing, you might see this door in the video. It's the door that we did the city walk, city tour together with the people. And on the side that we took this photo is the house of the district commissioner. So the very powerful man, the one who can point the finger and then make change to the city. Behind this wall is the river. It's the heart where the city starts. It's the riverside where people can rest. And so in the workshop, we talk about that possible door that we wish we could go through. And then after the co-creation, we have more discussion with the district mayor. We did more surveys, and then they really break the walls to connect the city. Behind that is this river, the blue part at the back. And then the district commissioner is the part of I think it's probably number 3. Then the sidewalk, you see this. Then later, the local team, the local architect, continue to work on this, do it more measured, more accurate, and then talk with the mayor, discuss about possibilities of this sidewalk. And then at this moment, they are starting to do it. It doesn't look from the picture underneath. Of course, it's not 100% right. It's not accurate. It doesn't matter at this point, but it will grow, it will spin, it will snowball. So I don't know, I cannot give a conclusion to this or these things that I'm saying, but I think maybe each one of you can have a small pieces that you get from what I share and what we share. Okay.
Thank you, Gwiti.
I think that's, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for bringing the idea of the energy of the city and how you listen and feel with people. So that's very interesting. Shall we move then to Akil? And if people have comments or questions, you can also drop it in the chat. Akil, would you like to?
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me. And it's always really great to be here and to hear about everyone else's projects as well. This is like by far the most interesting meeting I've been in all week, so thank you for that. It's been fantastic. Also, the comments and the questions in the chat have been really great. Like Maria, you're really going for it with your questions. I can see it. It's looking good. Okay, cool. So I'll share my screen and try my hardest to stick to the allocated time, which I can't remember what it was. So here we go. Yeah. So as Catalina said, my name is Akil Scaife-Smith, and I'm the co-director of a small design studio called Resolve Collective. Resolve Collective is an interdisciplinary design studio that looks between architecture, art, engineering, and technology to address social issues. A lot of the work that we do revolves around a design philosophy that we call using the site as a resource. So that means not only the appraisal of local materials, but also the kind of revaluing and reappraising of local and tacit knowledge in the areas. So when we began working in 2016, we first started working in our local area. And I'm from South London, from Streatham, Brixton sides. And so when we started working, we were working in our local area, and that negotiation or that internal conversation that we had to have between both designer and local, and understanding the flexibility of those positions it's something that we've kind of kept on in our practice since, when we've had the kind of fortune to work in places that we aren't local to. The work that we do heavily involves young people, and a lot of that is around work with disadvantaged young people or disempowered young people, which I think is a term that I'm more kind of drawn more towards. that can be extremely young people, but also kind of increasingly now with other demographics and some slightly older demographics as well. The work that we do kind of takes many forms, and this is, for example, it'd be murals. So this is a work in Brixton. If anyone's been down there, it's on the bridge there, which we're fortunate enough to do, to work that exists in cultural institutions, to work that exists in public spaces and kind of abandoned spaces, and meanwhile, which I think was commented on in the chat. And so, although it takes these different spaces and forms, and also workshopping is a really important part of that, it all kind of hinges on this process of how we work with and for different communities, including kind of our own. So I think it's also our identity as Afro-Caribbean individuals within London is also kind of quite central to that. I'm going to go very quickly through 2 projects and then have a final nosy on like this whole Corona thing, which I think it's really important to talk a little bit about, and some of the kind of successes and failures that we've had in those. So one of the first projects that we did was Passageway. And this was for Brixton, I talked about Brixton for the 3rd time today, I'm going to keep going. And in Brixton Market is where it was situated. And we were interested in this idea of market value, not the idea of what is the kind of financial value of housing, but no, what is the, what are these alternative values of urban markets in our cities today? And so Brixton Market is quite historically central to the Afro-Caribbean community in London. And we were really interested in, my computer getting the freezing thing, thinking about how we can use the site as a resource. So we were looking for a kind of spatial currency that we could fill, and we were in an abandoned store, an abandoned kind of storage unit in the market. We came across the banana boxes, and the banana boxes were kind of really integral market infrastructure in the market. And we sought to repurpose these banana boxes that were used from everything but bananas. They were used for like tables, chairs, plinths, and storage, to turn that into an internal structure. And this became part of a space that was a platform for local events, workshops, exhibitions, parties for a month, in which we kind of explored this issue around the value of urban markets. And we also incorporated food and work from kind of local businesses involved in food as well. So like I said, the workshop, the space was a kind of platform for all of these things, and the connectivity of the space, far beyond the kind of compellingness of how we tried to manifest it, was also this idea of opening the door. And that's something that Lucy, I think, was really explicit on in terms of open house, in that having this space where people could just return to day in, day out. We had slightly more flexible times in that, like, it was open from, I don't know, some stupid time in the morning to like very late at night. And then we also had lots of parties. And in the past, I was quite embarrassed about how many party slides I put in my presentations, and I actually meant to take them out. But I think actually joy is a really important part of our work, and thus partying is also too. And so creating these spaces by which we have the space to enjoy ourselves, especially in a city where these are increasingly taken away from us, I think is extremely important. Also exhibitions, as I talked about, and so platforming the work of other local artists as well was a really important part of that. Meanwhile Space, which is something that was commented on in the chat, and is something is kind of part of this work, and this work is obviously temporary. If you're there now, you wouldn't see it. But the work kind of continues on. We've tried to negotiate that temporality, or that temporariness, sorry, by looking at how it continues on through research. So we published a number of different research pieces on the banana boxes, and more kind of widely the spread of the banana industry in the Central Americas and the Caribbean, and how that kind of relates to the movement of Black bodies and infrastructure in the region too. And that's become an important part of how that project kind of lived on. Next, the Garage, which is a project that we did in Sheffield, a place I had never been prior to there. So really thinking about how we take this way of working locally into a different local. And for Sheffield, we were really interested in the idea of mapping people's emotional responses to the city. This was highly influenced by Kevin Lynch, but also more so by conversations we've been having in our own areas about knife crime and the prevalence of gang violence and this kind of thing. And so in Sheffield, we sought to try and understand the city through other people's eyes. And we went along a process of emotional mapping with a number of different participants, through which we tried to understand these nuances around Sheffield and how people connected to space in Sheffield. And now the idea wasn't to get an objective understanding of the city, but rather to get an entirely subjective understanding. The mapping process was really performative, and far beyond the map telling it something itself, that process of being in the performance, that part of being part of the mapping exercise was what was extremely important to us, and what kind of enabled us to see and understand, or at least feign to understand, things in Sheffield that, you know, we would have never been able to see and never saw with our own eyes. On top of that, kind of using the site as a resource was a huge part of this, and instead of looking at the immediate site, although that was also quite interesting, we were in Park Hill Estate, for anyone who knows that in Sheffield, a really famous 60s housing estate. We tried to tap into different waste materials from local art galleries in Sheffield, and so using surplus materials that had been left over from other exhibitions, as well as scaffolding from the estate, we kind of subdivided the estate into a number of different, gallery into a number of different areas, through which we could try and evince people's emotional responses to the city. And although we call ourselves designers, a lot of the work we do isn't actually design. And a lot of the work we do kind of pulling up to other people's spots and kind of hanging out with people. Lots and lots of hanging out is involved in what we're doing. And also programming. So we program the spaces as well. And so we facilitated a 2-month public program in that space for the performances and workshops and all sorts of things. And that took on a programmatic layer to the physical layer. All towards this idea of how we understand people's emotional responses to the city. So these are kind of different components within the space through which we were doing that, each of which kind of responding to a programmatic layer. For example, narration looked at a kind of series, a week-long series of deep listening workshops in the city, listening to people's experiences, inspired by the stories of people that we had talked to before, but also people that we knew. My mum grew up in Sheffield for a very small period of time, so that was important. Performing in the city was a huge part. And for this, we also tried to change the programmatic scheme of the gallery itself, opening up the space to become a place for which people could rehearse and perform and jam, all the way through, kind of changing the narrative around art institutions in the city as well, if not temporarily. And just some more examples from that space. So finally, onto the digital, the place that we all love to hate and hate to love. This year and last year, obviously, we've been forced to change, and a lot of our work is extremely spatial, and it involves bringing people together. That's the crux of what we do, I guess. And in the absence, that was in Corona, that's the only thing you're not allowed to do. And so in the absence of that, we've had to kind of resort to this digital sphere in how we engage, but also how we create platforms for people, how we kind of co-create with people, and how we share and understand from people, how we learn from people as well. And so we've done that to kind of relative success and failures. And just a few examples very quickly. So the first is, and I'll put these links on the chat, is a website that we designed for Croydon Council. So we were working with with a consortium of architects and the council to look at a kind of a master plan for an area called the Purley Way. And the idea for the master plan was to be kind of entirely co-created or kind of co-designed, participatory in some way. And then Corona hit. And I think there was a kind of a level of negotiation with the council in terms of whether or not we continue to go forward with these plans, in terms of like guiding how development should happen so it's not prescribing development, but rather guiding how it could and should happen. And so we created an online platform through which people could leave their memories of the area on a map that we designed of the area. And they could leave everything from voice notes on their phones to videos to text notes and these kind of things. And that provided a really important way in which we could understand people's memories of the area. This is an area that's largely dominated by heavy industry, also an area that's largely dominated by kind of business as well, and people often think of it like that, but integral to lots of people's ways of growing up in the area, and also integral to people's kind of backstories in these areas. So there's some interesting entwined histories that we sought to try and bring out through this. So this kind of sat with things like financial audits, and it sat with different more kind of numerical and quantitative research that the consortium carried out in order to form some of the guidance principles. And then maybe the last one actually, I'll make this last one so we don't run out too much over time. Last one is a research and kind of installation project we were doing in Braunschweig in Germany. We got kicked out of Germany because of Corona at the time, and we had to lock down, and it was all a bit dramatic thing. But the work was around a German Ghanaian philosopher called Anton Wilhelm Ammer, who existed in the 18th century in Germany. And the gallery was really keen to engage people around the memory of this figure, since Braunschweig was quite a place that embraced their history quite well, but didn't, that kind of precluded, for obvious reasons, the history of this character, or this person. And so as part of a physical installation that we also designed, we also created a digital one through which we compiled research and reading together in order to distribute and to kind of like share that research around the life, not only of Anton Wilhelm Amo, but also of Africans in Europe between the 16th and early 19th centuries. What was integral for us in this, and this was also during the kind of Black Lives Matter movement, and lots of other things, social movements that were going on across the world, was that we kind of added to and connected existing dating sources, feeding into kind of the existing work that was going on, rather than providing these new lists or kind of new, the sense of novelty. We also wanted to try and organize the data in ways in which people could access it without having to use text. And so we created these flags based on a Amato flags by which people could kind of navigate that data intuitively rather than doing that through kind of premeditated means. And then just a kind of reflection on having users, I think one of the interesting things about the digital is that it's allowed us to access people, like hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of more people than we otherwise would have. That reach is really important. However, there's the intimacy that we've lost in there, I think has kind of deeply hampered how we create those connections and the lasting effects that our projects have, even if they are temporary. So I'll stop there before I use up too much time. And then if there's any questions, I guess we can chat about that later.